We all know, Nick, that foresters have a variety of techniques they use to manage the bush. We find ourselves in Queensland now, and we're going to look at a way of bringing unmanaged, messy forest back to life.
It might seem somewhat counterintuitive, Andrew, but one of the best ways to promote a healthy forest is to remove some of the trees. In many parts of Australia, privately owned forests are left to fend for themselves, and that usually means they become overgrown and overcrowded, with weeds and exotic species choking out the natural balance. Private Forestry Service Queensland is a not-for-profit organisation which is helping to restore that balance by introducing private landholders to forest management techniques.
One of our main functions is to improve the management of the private forestry resource. We've got a fairly extensive resource. It's about 3 million hectares in southern Queensland. We spend a fair bit of time trying to educate landholders into better management of that resource, as well as developing new techniques and new systems and to look to new products and new markets to make that a bit more of an economical proposition.
This block of land 2 hours west of Brisbane is a fairly typical example of the private forestry story. It's had a number of different owners over the years that have shown it varying degrees of care.
Well, it was originally owned by Hood Sawmill, and they, I'd suggest, managed it very, very carefully in the past. And then it was later bought by a masonite manufacturing plant in Ipswich, and they harvested it very hard. They removed a proportion of the stand for sawlog, and they removed the rest for pulp for the masonite production. And so that's not an atypical situation. Virtually every tree here is a new tree that has come up in the last 20 to 30 years.
Overcrowding is one of the major issues created by this kind of set-and-forget management regime. The clearfelled sites regenerate with a vengeance. Thousands of trees per hectare, all competing for limited resources of soil, water and nutrients. So Sean, you guys have been out with a spray marker here. Explain what's happening in this plot.
Well, we need to understand what the stand consists of. So we put in a 1/20 of the hectare plot. We want to know what the residual stocking is, and we want to know how many trees we're going to end up with if we mark the trees that we want to actually retain.
And so what are we kind of looking at here?
Yeah, it's a grossly overstocked bit of forest here. It's 2,150 stems per hectare.
Yep.
We want to reduce that down to 200 stems per hectare. That's the healthy stocking rate.
So you've got a bit of thinning to do.
Do the sticking to do.
Thinning a stand might eventually result in the removal of 90% of the overcrowded trees, which allows the remainder to grow unhindered, and the results are undeniable.
This is a bit of a demonstration of how thinning actually works. This behind me, just been thinned recently. It was 2,000 stems per hectare, where the trees struggle to grow. They're struggling to survive even. But look here, 4 years ago, this area was thinned, and these trees are starting to grow straight and tall.
And to further illustrate that point, this is an area where thinning took place 8 years ago, and as you can see, the trees are larger, they're straight, and they are powering along. With healthy trees more evenly spaced and a regime of controlled burning to contain weeds, the forest develops an all-important understory, which in turn provides food and habitat for native animals.
If you read any of the old explorers' journals, they all talk about park-like environment with the way the Aboriginals managed their fire. They burnt regularly. They had very wide-spaced trees, probably even less, probably more like 80 stems per hectare, very wide-spaced large trees. So it's certainly mimicking what was found here pre-European.
So thinning and retaining trees like this not only makes for a much healthier bush, Nick, but there's actually some opportunities here in the thinnings themselves.
In a perfect world, Andrew, nothing goes to waste. But at the moment, there isn't much of a market for this sort of stuff. But all that might be about to change.
We're particularly looking for the biofuel market in the future. There's a new factory being constructed in Gladstone to manufacture diesel from organic matter, and it's a perfect opportunity to remove this non-merchantable, non-commercial sector of the stand, often in the numbers of thousands per hectare, down to this 150 to 200 stems per hectare. That's the optimum for not just productivity, but in all the environmental attributes. You get good ground cover, you get good crown development so that you get future habitat trees, etc.
Timber sourced from private land is set to play an increasingly important role in Queensland's native supply equation. To help harness that resource, PFSQ is investing in the future, taking on graduate trainees to help carry the message of active forest management.
Okay, so this one's a perfect habitat tree. So we'll mark them with a big H. You can see it's got hollows down the bottom here, and it's also plenty of hollow limbs, so it's an old tree. We always retain trees like that for future habitat.
What kind of animals?
Oh, bats, possums, gliders, and also hollow nesting birds as well.
The people working in PFSQ, they've got a lot of land knowledge and a lot of people knowledge, I think, which is something you don't learn from a science degree, especially. And so, yeah, I've learned a lot in just the 4 weeks I've been doing it.
Private Forestry Service Queensland is a not-for-profit organisation which aims to help landholders better manage their forest for both environmental and commercial outcomes. Forests which are left to fend for themselves are often overcrowded and choked with weeds. A regime of thinning and controlled burning makes for taller, healthier trees and creates habitat for local flora and fauna. Developments in biofuels and veneers are promising new value streams for thinning, so if you're a landholder and would like to know more, visit pfsq.net.